Islam. Islam. Peace to all three on the panel, and peace to all who came to attend. Forgive me if I'm nervous, but I'm glad to be in your presence. I'm a secured party creditor, declaring my appellation name with the UCC and a non-UC filing, living, collapsing, and controlling the trust. Our brothers are in these Albion dark magic courts, and your last question kind of segues into what I'm doing now, which trying to crush the courts and the dark magic with the Magi's in all these administrative venues. Has any one of you have made an effort to integrate the metaphysics of Phil Valentine with what you're doing at Aseer in crushing him with paperwork, as also coaching and navigating through these systems and controlling our vessel, because we're forced and compelled through the birth certificate theft of the SOVCIT Trust and the Mortmain Act, as well as the various collapsing of the federal debt and HR 192. I can go on and on. But is there any type of manifestation or integration of the metaphysics so we can have, Noble Drew Ali, his declaration of the 10-10-59 in Cook County, and integrate it in the paperwork so we can get all our brothers and sisters out of these crooked, false, magic
Not everybody.
administrations, though.
Not everyone, brother.
What in the hell type of question was that? I did not understand any parts of that question that this Moorish man just asked. So with that being said, I can't even imagine what type of answer he is about to get from these three charlatans sitting on this stage. Let's sit back and see what answer we get.
Paperwork. Okay, paper come from trees.
No shit.
Now, I knew the question was absolutely ridiculous, but I did not expect Aseer the Duke of Tears to start with something that is so obvious. He started his answer with paper comes from trees. Wow. Just the opening statement of his answer, I'm sure that we are in for a treat. So let's just sit back and watch this charlatan go to town on answering that ridiculous question that was posed.
Paperwork. Okay, paper come from trees. So in the end, we're really talking about an integration of something natural turned into a flat surface, right? In which now people are trying to diametrically put themselves onto it. But that's what they did to you.
What you talking about, huh?
Quick story. I was getting beat up in court. I maybe told it before, long time ago, taken to court for things or whatever. And I was in the process of that for maybe 5 years. By the first 2 years, I was getting beat up. By the third year, I realized that this whole thing is not even real. Like, as real as it was, what made it real was my intention in it. And my intention in it was to stop them from attacking me and taking what I felt was mine. But once I realized that they could not take anything from me that I did not give them, then it became a different flow. And so I started to understand that the paperwork is really just a vehicle that really had nothing to even do with what's on the paper. I started to do get like the Seal of Solomon, because I realized that a lot of people that's processing this paperwork is Ashkenazim Jews. So if that's the case, then they're part of the B'nai B'rith, and then from there they're part of the other so-called orders that they deal with. And when I realized that, I said, well, there's binding sigils that our ancestors created that I could use as watermarks on my paperwork. I'm going to start using that. Then I started saying, well, you know what? If that's the case in that work, then why don't I start doing other things and really going in there in my proper self? So I started at the time, if y'all remember, I used to wear a lot of feathers in my hair when I was growing it out. So one day I went with all black raven feathers, right? And I had on a whole, like, you know when the mobsters wear the black trench coat over they thing, right? So I went in there with that, with the medals and all of that. I went in there, put a little obelisk on the desk, gave him my paperwork, and every time the judge spoke, I spinned it. What started to happen was he started stuttering, he started drooling, the computer started to malfunction, right? And then the next time I went to court, the court was packed just like this, but it was just for me. So then I started to realize, oh, they're sending the boys in. So let's really take it up, because now I want to see what I can do. Because now I realize that the magic is really me, that these people is trying to take something from me that they could never control.
Are you guys hearing what this man is saying? He is talking a bunch of nonsense. And it is crazy that that crowd of people just cheered and clapped for him. Like, these people are so brainwashed. This is actually scary. This is like a cult leader making a speech to his followers. These people just gave him an applause for the nonsense that he said, and he's not even finished with the ridiculous story he's about to tell. So let him get back into his crazy story.
So it got to the point, to make a long story shorter, it got to the point that I created what was called a letter of rogatory, based on a right of avizandum.
Okay, so I know you guys might have been wondering what a letter of rogatory is. So here you have it. You guys can read it right here. My question is this: what in the Doo-hick-ey does this letter of rogatory have to do with anything that this man is speaking on? Like, these people just literally just make things up. Like, he's telling a story about him being in court, and he, quote unquote, created a letter of rogatory. Why did you create a letter of rogatory? This letter of rogatory is a request from a court to a foreign court. Why would you ever need this in your particular court case? Like, what are you talking about?
So it got to the point, to make a long story shorter, it got to the point that I created what was called a letter of rogatory, based on a right of avizandum. This is where Moorish science comes in, because true Moorish science is the study of self. And what Noble Joe Ali basically brought, he was the first one talking us that we was already here. And in the process of realizing that, I started to actualize the actual paperwork and started to reduce all the statutory language, and just started to speak in what they call the King's English, which is the language that our ancestors spoke here. So when they would ask me questions, so one time the judge asked me a question, and I just responded to him in Latin. I said, "Qui cumaleo contrahit vel es vel ebe debit non ignoros contradictos ellos," which means he who enters into a contract either has to be aware or ought not be aware of the origin of the contract.
Can anyone in the comment section please confirm that his translation is actually accurate and that he is actually speaking the King's English? Because I've never heard of that before.
I said, "Qui cumaleo contrahit vel es vel ebe debit non ignoros contradictos ellos," which means he who enters into a contract either has to be aware or ought not be aware of the origin of the contract. Once I did that, brothers and sisters, and gave them the paperwork and hit it with that letter of rogatory that basically let them know, I know the jig is up, I'm the judge, I'm the magi, and I expect you to release this bond to me by the next joint, or I'm going to put a whole lien on the building. When I went to the court the next time, they chained the door. They called my name, went to the door was chained. I had to sneak into the court behind.
Did you just hear what this Moorish fool just said? He just said his next court date, when they called his name, they chained the door. So he's alluding that the courts were so scared of him and his Moorish science that when they called his name, they chained the door so that way he couldn't get in and win his case. Do you realize how ridiculous this story is? This man is full of himself. for lack of better words. This story is one of the most ridiculous stories that I have ever heard coming out of a Moorish sovereign's mouth.
Once I did that, brothers and sisters, and gave them the paperwork and hit it with that little rogatory that basically let them know, I know the jig is up, I'm the judge, I'm the magi, and I expect you to release this bond to me by the next joint, or I'm going to put a whole lien on the building. When I went to the court the next time, they chained the door. They called my name, went to the door, the door was changed. I had to sneak into the court behind. Then when I got into the court, the judge wasn't even on the bench. He didn't even show up. They sent a little old white lady, a little clerk lady out in the back and asked what I wanted to do. I said, well, this is dismissed. Pointed down on the ring. I said, it's dismissed. And because he didn't show up and do what he's supposed to do, I'm going to follow through with the action.
This fool just said that when they called his name, the door, the door was chained. So what he did was he snuck into the courtroom from behind. First of all, how did you do that, sir? Did you have some type of map, the blueprints of the building? How did you know how to sneak into the courtroom from behind? Like, what are you talking about? I can't believe these people that you're telling this story to, these grown ass people in this audience. Everybody should just get up and walk out, because this is the most ludicrous story that I have ever heard. So they called your name and they were so scared of you that they chained the door, and you had the blueprint to the building, so you was able to sneak into the courtroom from behind. That's what you said. You snuck into the court behind. So you had the blueprint. You snuck into the courtroom from behind. The judge wasn't there, so you put the gavel down and you dismissed the case yourself. Oh my goodness, this story is just wow. I can't believe this man. I can't believe he just said that. I just can't believe it. These Moorish charlatans are just, this stories just get more crazy and crazier. Like this is utter nonsense.
When I went to the court the next time, they chained the door. They called my name, went to the door was changed. I had to sneak into the court behind. Then when I got into the court, the judge wasn't even on the bench. He didn't even show up. They sent a little old white lady, a little clerk lady out in the back and asked what I wanted to do. I said, well, this is dismissed. Pointed down on the ring. I said, it's dismissed. And because he didn't show up and do what he's supposed to do, I'm going to follow through with the action. Follow through with the action. 3 months after that, went back down to the court building closed. Right here, 284 Adams Street. Look it up. I went in there, the court building closed. It said they had to close it for rats.
Okay, so now the courthouse on your next court date was closed because they closed it for rats. I'm totally convinced that this man, Aseer the Duke of Tears, is literally just making this story up as he sits there. He sees that the audience is gullible, and he is literally just making this story up. This story is utterly ridiculous.
3 months after that, went back down to the court building closed. Right here, 284 Adams Street. Look it up. I went in there, the court building closed. It said they had to close it for rats. And then they moved it across the street to the new fabricated building they built up in the process of all of this happening.
Okay, so it's clear that the courthouse was closed because they opened the new building across the street. Not because it was closed for rats or because it was your court date and they were so scared that you were coming that they closed the courthouse. No, the courthouse was closed because the new court building was now open. What are you talking about, sir?
And in there, the court building closed. It said they had to close it for rats. So I still hold the lien on that. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm trying to say I did this with no UCC, with no statutory language with no preconceived notion other than what I manifested out of myself to do so. And from that point, that's when I realized the way out is the way in. You know what Ali said? I'm going to leave this European around long enough to show you how to run a government. And so that's what we did. And we have been working to establish that since for a while, and it's been working. And the more we're doing ourselves, the more it's the total opposite. So I appreciate what you're saying, brother, but like our illustrious doctor told us, eventually none of that stuff gonna matter. How are you able to articulate all of what you said without saying it like that? That's the question.
Is that really the question? There's not even much more I can say on what I just heard. At the beginning of the video, there was a Moorish sovereign who asked a question that I didn't even understand, and this man, Aseer the Duke of Tears, answered the question with a bunch of nonsense. A story he literally just made up as he was sitting there. Wow. Aseer the Duke of Tears, you are the king of kings when it comes to this Moorish nonsense and making up fairy tale stories. That was the most ridiculous story that I have ever heard coming from a Moorish sovereign citizen.